kind of go in here at the bottom.
Forgive Me Father 1 and 2 are probably some of the best shooters I've played this year. Now, I know everyone is excited for Black Ops 6, myself included.
But if it's truth you seek, look in the dark. Impressive. Very nice.
But I still find myself gravitating towards indie shooters just because I always find that they have a really firm grasp on how to just make a fun shooter. I mean, just in the last year or so, we got Trepang, Cultic, Sulaco, Scare Ritual, and now we can add Forgive Me Father 2 to that list of excellent indie shooters.
And I gotta tell you, it was perfect. Perfect. Everything, down to the last minute details.
And as far as the first game, it was released back in 2022, and how I never got around to it is anyone's guess.
Did I just kill a man? Forgive me, Father.
Forgive Me Father is one of the many boomer shooters to come out in recent years, but what really sets it apart is the art style. And while games like Dusk and Sulaco go for that old school pixelated look, Forgive Me Father 1 and 2 have a cel-shaded comic book aesthetic.
Eat your veggies, whatever.
They go for the same aesthetic as 13, but I'm talking about the original one, not that abomination from a few years ago. Anyway, the general premise is that you play as either a reporter or a priest who go to the town of Pestisville in search of a missing family member, only to instead find the place overrun with undead and a whole heap of eldritch nightmares.
Sir, please, manners?
And you're gonna fight your way through mobs of enemies to find the source of what's going on. And just like with other boomer shooters, you've got a whole heap of weapons to use. There's a knife, a pistol, a shotgun, a couple of machine guns, and later on you'll get a harpoon gun, a grenade launcher, and a plasma gun. And all of these weapons can be upgraded via a skill tree and skill points that you earn by killing enemies. And not only can they be upgraded, but they can be upgraded into different variations to suit your own playstyle. Like the pistol can be upgraded into dual pistols for more damage, or a Mauser for more accuracy.
Tex.
And the shotgun can be upgraded into a stronger double barrel or this fishy pump action.
Very cool.
Each of the playable characters have the same arsenal, but they have different skills. The reporter focuses more on dealing damage, while the priest has more of a focus on defense. And I played through as the reporter, but I did play some of the priest to just see how he handles, and I definitely preferred the reporter.
More weapons! Now we're talking!
Her skills are a lot of fun, like this voodoo doll that causes a massive area of effect damage around her, and a camera that flashes to stun enemies for a brief amount of time. What I will say though, is that she just never shuts up.
I don't like where this is going.
And, like, sure, I get this as a boomer shooter, and characters often drop these one-liners.
Now this is a force to be reckoned with.
But she just never stops.
After what I saw here, I'll need a little backup. It sparks! More weapons! Now we're talking! Oh, there it goes. I shouldn't have been drinking this. I don't have a problem. You have a problem. I just realized that I don't even like porn.
Shut up! Shut up! Shut up!
It's also worth mentioning that the levels look great, but they do have a bit of a repetitive nature when you're clearing arenas and finding colored keys to get to the next area. And while this doesn't really bother me, because I like these kinds of games,
And I did it because I liked it. Hell, I loved it. I'm sitting here, I'm just itching. I'm itching to do it again. And
I can see some people really bouncing off of it quick. And it's not just keys that can get repetitive, you're going to be doing a lot of circle strafing. You have plenty of skills to use, like the voodoo doll and the camera I mentioned, but that's about it. You can't double jump, you can't dash, you can't get to a higher elevation to get an advantage on enemies. You're just going to be running in circles, spamming abilities, and swapping weapons. And again, that's what I'm here to do, but I feel like I should let you know what you're in for.
Hello, you guys on a trip or something?
I also started the game on normal, and as I progressed, I actually thought about turning up the difficulty, but man, Forgive Me Father gets fucking hard.
fuck!
Later levels become outright sadistic, with hidden enemies, traps, and at the end of worlds you'll fight bosses that are almost just a test of how much bullshit you can put up with. And I kind of think that this game does try to be difficult for the sake of being difficult at times, like with those hidden enemies or with these barrels that run right up to you and explode.
What? These monsters are barrels too?
And I think there's a fine line between a challenge and just fucking the player over to pad out the length. I mean, some scenarios feel like you're not really supposed to be able to finish them on your first try. And in a game with no quick saving, you can find yourself replaying several minutes over and over. And the game doesn't have a map. And I think that's such a weird omission considering even Doom had a map to help you navigate the levels. And some of these levels can feel like a maze. Rooms can start to look samey and it just kind of causes confusion and frustration. And I can appreciate them going for an old school experience, but they're also clearly trying to have more modern sensibilities, like a skill tree, so why they don't have a map is beyond me. And I also want to mention that there's a flashlight in the game, or a lantern if you play as the priest, and you have to use this separately from the weapons. And this is just fucking stupid when you have to navigate dark areas with hidden enemies and pathways. Swapping between a light source and your weapon is just a downright handicap.
He's right, you know.
Now, as far as the enemies that you're actually shooting, there's a surprising amount of variety. There are some more basic zombies that carry around a spare head to replace the one that you just popped, as well as big guys that come after you tear them apart. Later on, you'll fight these soldier guys that shoot projectiles, fishmen that hide in shallow water, and even what are essentially the witches from Left 4 Dead. And eventually you'll even fight these guys. And look man, I'm not sure if the devs have unresolved father issues, but even I got flashbacks once they started giving me the belt. I also just want to quickly mention just how many references that this game packs in. There's so many movie and game references that it almost becomes a bit much. But I can at least appreciate the love that the devs have for a lot of the things that I do too.
Thanks. See you later. Bye.
Shit.
And while I think Forgive Me Father has problems, I can see the love that went into it. The environments are gorgeous, the guns are absolutely awesome to look at, and the enemies are mostly fun to fight. And as a fan of both shooters and Lovecraft, seeing the two married here in this way is really awesome. So I'm really glad that Bite Barrel has another one in them. Now, wait. Before I go on to the second game, only 1% of the viewers that watch my channel are subscribed. I'm making these videos to talk about the games that I like, and this is just a hobby. But I like to do more and create more, so please like the video, because it really does help to get it out there. And subscribe, because I'm going to keep making these, and I do want as many people as possible to see them. But alright, thanks for watching. Now, the rest of the video. Forgive Me Father 2 keeps that Lovecraftian theme, but adds a lot more weapons and enemies to the mix to really ramp things up. And everything in this game is just full of detail, since I'm sure a lot of it had to be hand-drawn. Everything looks old and musty, kind of like you might expect in a world where everyone appears to have been gone for quite some time and everything has kind of just fallen into ruin. All of the environments have a lot of personalities and feel completely distinct level to level. Like the city streets are filled with old, early 20th century cars, dead trees, and an eerie fog. There's a sanctuary dedicated to worshipping the Great Ones, and it's filled with candlelit corridors and tentacled tapestries. There's a university filled with shelves overflowing with books that probably cause your brain to explode if you were to read them. There's also a level in World War I trenches filled with barbed wire, bunkers, and bombed out houses. And these are just a few examples, but all of these are not only visually distinct, but they're full of detail, and you can tell a lot of care was taken when making every single surface and object. Environments also have these posters and paintings around, and not only do they fit the theme, but some of them are genuinely pretty funny. This Cthulhu Wants You one got me pretty good. And those are just the environments. Then you've got the weapons and the enemies. And the weapons are absolutely awesome. While the first had quite a few, this game doubles down and gives the player even more variety to choose from, and they're all filled with a ton of personality. From the more basic weapons like pistols and shotguns to more exotic ones like this game's version of the Gatling gun or a railgun. And I can appreciate super realistic weapons, like the ones in Call of Duty, but these ones are just so cool to look at, and I'll always take the more artistic styles over games that try to look as photorealistic as possible. Now when it comes to how the enemies look, these are also brimming with personality. Some of them, like the zombies, remain more or less the same from the first game, but I think what they've done here is make them a bit more distinctive. Take the zombies. They carry a severed head with them, which, not only fits the theme of madness, with these guys presumably going insane and decapitating someone, but when you go for a headshot, they replace the head you just exploded with that second one that they were carrying. So when you see these guys, you know not to go for a headshot, but to go for the torso. There are also guys carrying around giant slabs of concrete, and with these guys, your shots just bounce right off. So you kind of have to wait for them to lower their defense when they attack, or circle strafe around and get them in the back. And while the enemies in the first game did have distinctive identities, I think the enemies here are easier to identify and have better telegraphed attacks. They sort of remind me of the enemies in Doom Eternal, which also had extremely different visual designs and allowed you to make that sort of situational assessment. And yeah man, you're constantly having to assess arenas, looking for the most dangerous enemies, finding choke points and explosive barrels, or hunting for health and armor pickups. It can be fucking intense at times. And yeah, sure, the first game was pretty intense too, but here enemies actually require a bit more consideration when approaching them. And just like in Doom Eternal, I was constantly considering which weapon would be the right tool for the right job. Now, I played on normal, and the later levels and a certain boss fight are downright exhausting to get through, but that's a good thing. And when it comes to the level, they're a mix of old school design and puzzle solving. Each level comes down to you basically just looking for colored keys, being red, blue, and yellow, similar to the first game, but how you get these can differ from level to level. Some levels just have you progress to an arena, kill all the enemies, grab the key, and move forward. but some of these require you to solve a puzzle to be able to progress. You'll be flipping switches in a specific order to platform ahead, and one area requires you to take things slow and actually consider your shots or get got by this game's equivalent of mimics. And that's just to say these levels aren't just find a keycard and move on. Some of them actually require you to use your noodle every now and then. I do think what's really missing here over the first game is narrative. Forgive Me Father 2 does have some narrative, but it's mainly just finding letters between levels that kind of get a bit of a heads up as to where you're gonna go next. There's the tiniest amount of dialogue at the beginning, but it's not even really voiced, it's just subtitles. This doesn't bother me too much. I don't need much to go on other than these guys are ugly, but Cosmic Horror is such a cool concept, and I do wish we got a bit more about the world and why it is the way it is. I'd like to learn more about why the monsters were formed and how to exactly fix this mess. But I mean, I do know exactly how I'm going to fix it, with bullets, but there's got to be more to that, right? But if bullets are all we have to go on, I guess we should talk about the guns. I mentioned about how cool they look, but they each serve their own function too. You'll start off with just a shank and move on from there. You'll find a pistol, a shotgun, later on you'll get a grenade launcher and an assault rifle, but then, in between levels, you can go back to this asylum where you can spend tokens you find to purchase new guns. And all of these are super fun to use. The Gatling gun has to spin up, but can just mulch through crowds. There's a semi-auto shotgun, and it's this fish-looking thing, but it can tear through harder enemies. And then there's this pistol. Yuck. There's almost no weapon that's objectively better than another. They all have trade-offs over each other, like increased fire rate, or lower accuracy, or higher damage, but then a slower reload speed. And yeah man, here weapons can be reloaded. In the first, all weapons just kind of had a pool of ammo, but in the second one, you can reload any gun. But as I played, I realized I almost never had to reload. All weapons seem to be refilled with ammo whenever I re-equip them. And earlier I said that there's almost no weapon that's objectively better than another, and that's because the pistol you get at the beginning of the game is absolutely filthy if you're using mouse and keyboard. It's essentially 100% accurate with no recoil, making headshots super easy, and its super high damage will take out even the more difficult enemies in just 2 shots. But I do wish there was a progression system sort of similar to the first where I could choose how to upgrade the weapons that I prefer to use. Earlier I mentioned you can purchase perk cards, and you do this between levels as well. They cost a currency, and you usually get enough of this currency after about 2 levels to buy a new one. Some of these have passive perks, like this one which makes the flashlight more effective, or another that makes reloading faster. Others change what your ability trigger does, like being able to withstand more damage or drastically increasing the fire rate. And just like with the weapons, these are just down to personal preference. I chose to use an active ability that let me soak up more damage, and the passive perk for my flashlight, because mashing the F key to charge it just got really old really quick. But at least I didn't have to use it separately from the weapons. Of course, Forgive Me Father 2 isn't perfect either. While there are a lot of weapons and perks, I do wish that there was a more robust upgrade system from the first game, or just upgrades in general. The Gatling gun was one of my favorite weapons, and I wish I could have upgraded it or adjusted how it functioned, like making it charge faster but reload slower, or with the grenade launcher. It has a low capacity, right, but it does a lot of damage. Maybe let me increase that capacity but lower the damage radius or the damage dealt. And I guess, sure, you could say that different variants of that weapon type sort of do that, but not all of them. Like the railgun, for example, functions differently from its alternative, which is like this laser beam. And while my issue with the flashlight was resolved here, there's still no map, and just like the first game, levels here can be a bit hard to navigate. And maybe it isn't the biggest deal, sure, I just think it's odd. And since the game is in early access, it ends rather abruptly. I finished it in about 4 hours, and it just kind of left me wanting more. The Steam page has it set to release later this year, and I hope they do, because after playing those 4 hours, man, I just wanted to play more. The weapons are excellently designed and fun to use, and enemies are some of the most well designed I've seen in a shooter, like, period. And the music, dude, the music is awesome. Both games were composed by Tim Fialka. I hope I'm saying that right. I'm sure I'm not. But this guy absolutely crushed it. And obviously there's plenty of time to make changes and make additions before the game comes out later this year. And like, if the lack of a map is all I really have to complain about, I'd say the people at Byte Barrel are doing pretty fucking good. So while I don't really suggest that you go out and get Forgive Me Father 2 immediately, I do suggest that you get the first game if you haven't.
Someone, or something, tries to mess with my head again.
I even think that they added it to the PlayStation Store recently. And you should definitely wishlist the sequel, because I know wishlisting helps the gays. And you should definitely wishlist the sequel, because I know wishlisting helps the devs gauge interest. But man, look, with that, that's all I really have for you. Go play Forgive Me Father. Go watch the rest of my videos, actually, do that too. But look, until my next one, bye.